Today, we're in London with a man who has spent over 2 decades advising the world's biggest energy players on the most complex, high-stakes projects, from Singapore to Seoul to Tokyo to London.
We need ideas that recognise the need for human prosperity to continue, people's lives to get better. Cheap energy is better, and cheap and clean energy is the best.
Lewis McDonald leads one of the largest energy law teams in the world, with a vision to make and consolidate Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer as one of the leading energy law firms on the planet.
The energy system globally is just massive, and about 80% of that globally is actually coming from fossil fuels. So even if renewable energy is growing at an exponential rate, the energy system as a whole is eclipsing that growth year on year.
From the surge in data-driven energy demand to the race for decarbonisation, Lewis brings a pragmatic, rare, global perspective on how the next phase of energy addition will really unfold and what it will take to make the transition work in the real world.
People must realise how essential energy is. I say it to my kids. I say to them, don't worry about AI, worry about the other kids that can use it.
Today, we sit down to uncover his journey, his mindset, and his unfiltered view on the future of energy, technology, and the law. Welcome to the Energy Executive 360 podcast with me, Emilio Falmata, and today I'm joined by my guest, Lewis McDonald. Lewis, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time. I know I used to work at Chambers & Partners, so I understand the schedule of a lawyer is busy, but I think these are conversations that are really interesting to have and I want to spread around the world, so I really appreciate you being here with me today. And the first question I wanted to ask today is kind of a double-pronged and quite a simple one.
Okay.
But the first one is why law and why energy? And let me explain why I kind of want to know this, because as we spoke last week, the energy industry does have a negative narrative around it, and I think the legal industry kind of has also kind of a negative perception in common narrative. So what kind of brought these things together for you as a career path to, dedicate your life to?
Well, Emilio, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Of course.
I know you're launching something new here, and I really hope it all goes well. And that's an interesting couple of questions to start with. I did a bit of maths in my time as well, and I think if you have a negative times a negative equals a positive, right? So you said law's a bit negative, energy's a bit negative, so maybe when you put them together, it's all good. Interesting question. How did I get into law? How did I get into energy? I think law came first, in the sense that, if you think back to when you're around 15 or 16 or whatever, and you're at school and you start getting asked about, I wouldn't say thinking about, you start getting asked about, well, what are you going to do? Yeah. What are you going to do beyond school? And you have to start thinking about that when you're like 15 or so, because you've got to choose subjects. And I know over here, my eldest girl's just finished her GCSEs, so she's going into sixth form. So it's a bit of an obsession at the moment in the McDonald household. And
you're originally from Australia, correct?
Oh, originally. How long have you got, Emilio?
As long as you have. Yeah,
I'm originally from Scotland, okay?
Oh, wow.
But I grew up in New Zealand and then Australia, so it is a bit of a story. We can get to that perhaps. Others will have too many questions to deal with. I'll need a whiteboard to figure it all out. But no, in terms of the law, you reflect at a certain age on, well, what do I like doing? What am I good at? What do I want to be? How do I see myself? And I remember going through this massive brochure they had in Perth, Australia, where I went to school, and it was this big thing. It must have been like A3, a huge thing. And they had you go past slaughterer and it gets to solicitor. It was all the jobs, and I read both, and I thought, I think solicitor is probably the one I want. Good with words and like arguing and don't back down. All these personality traits that I thought, that sounds right. So I actually decided at about the age of 15 that I wanted to shoot for law, if you like. You had to get good marks to get into law school. Of course, yeah. Not quite medicine grade marks. And who knows, if I had had those sorts of marks, maybe I'd be a doctor right now and we'd be talking about something else. Maybe. But I thought law would be good, and I thought I could get the grades. I knew I'd have to work hard, but I thought I'm going to go for it. But funnily enough, I picked mostly sort of sciencey subjects for my equivalent of A-levels. Yeah. We do 6 subjects in Australia. So I did physics, chemistry, applicable mathematics, calculus, English and geography. There you go. I still remember, which is actually really quite disturbing in many respects. And I did those subjects, and I got the marks, and I decided to do law. But in Australia, you do a double degree. So if you're going to do law, because they want you to be like a normal human being as well, they get you to do a second degree.
Okay.
So I chose, most people choose law arts or law commerce, law economics. I chose law science.
Okay.
And when I had to decide what kind of science that I want to do, because there's sort of different things, different paths you can go down. And I chose what you would call natural sciences.
Okay.
I wanted to do genetics and law, and I don't know what I was thinking as a 17-year-old. I just thought I want to do some combo there with IP, and I didn't even know anything about it. But then when I started my science, I was absolutely fascinated by zoology. I know, it's crazy, right? Zoology. I did Zoology 105 in the second half of my first year of university, and I just absolutely loved it. We had this lecturer who just was able to tell the best stories. He was like the David Attenborough. Guy called Don Bradshaw, if he's out there, Professor Don Bradshaw. He'd be an older man now. Absolute legend. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And so I actually decided to continue and concentrate my science efforts on environmental science and zoology, and did that alongside my law. And so I did my first 3 years of university as a combined law science course, and then I got offered the opportunity to do honours in my science in my 4th year. So I stopped law for a year and then did a whole year of just pure science. Okay. It's probably like what you call a master's over here.
Yeah.
And I focused on, I tried to combine law and science in that year, and I looked at the laws in Western Australia that were basically designed to protect animals and like species, if you like. And I analysed them from a scientific perspective, and I looked at were they adequate or not to achieve the aim of preserving like biodiversity in Western Australia. I promptly concluded that they were not, and made some recommendations. And like purely by coincidence, they actually changed all the laws in Western Australia and put in place a Biodiversity Conservation Act at roughly the same time. But I don't think it had anything to do with what I did. But I think somebody else probably came to the same conclusion as I did, that that things need to change, and you have to protect habitat and metapopulations and all sorts of boring stuff that I won't disturb you with too much. But anyway, I went back into my law and I finished it off. But I decided by that point that I wanted to do something around the natural world and the law. And when I did my honours in law, I focused on climate change and how could the federal government of Australia, how could they derive power to look after the forests in the different Australian states? Because Australian states were clearing forests to make way for agriculture and development, etc. And so I did my topic on that. And I was really into it. I was really into climate change and biodiversity and all that. And this is between the years 1995 and 2000. So this is when like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was done in 94. This was when the Kyoto Protocol was done in 97, and all the environmental legislation was coming in. So it's quite an exciting time for a kid at university. But that was happening when I was there, and I came out and that's what I wanted to do. And so I went in, but I qualified into one of the big corporate law firms in Australia because I wanted to do certain types of law in energy, natural resources, etc. But I also wanted to go overseas, because you asked me where I was from. And I've got a lot of family in Scotland and Denmark, as it turns out. And my wife, I got married in 2001. So just after I graduated, I got together with my now wife at university. She's originally from Czechoslovakia, as it then was, Czech Republic now. So both of us wanted to go overseas. So I chose a law firm that I thought could get me interesting enough to get a job in London. So it's kind of a bit of foresight, a bit of planning, I suppose. And through going to the firm was Mallisons in Australia, now King & Wood Mallisons, an arch rival, in fact, of Freehills, Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer. Absolutely. I'd say they're the two top firms in Australia. Many would disagree, the people that don't work at those two firms. And that firm, I thought, that'll get me overseas. And it was through working at Mallisons. I had a fantastic boss, a guy called Robert Cole, another guy called Alan Murray. The things we were working on that they gave me were just so interesting, and they were all in the energy field. And it took me away from this idea that I was going to be an environmental lawyer, and it got me interested in the idea of being an energy lawyer. And then that's what I ultimately brought, if you like, into the London market when I came over here at the end of 2004. So that's probably enough to answer your two questions, maybe. I'll pause.
No, and what you talked about going abroad, taking that step into somewhere maybe that you don't know, taking that kind of risk. I'm doing that at the moment. I moved away from London to go and do my job. So I've been based in Mexico and Kuwait since January. You know,
Amazing.
it's quite a big step. It's it's something I was ready to do, but still is a big change. What was it for you that made you want to leave and kind of expand and go and pursue these things?
I guess my parents exposed me to it.
Okay.
You know, when I was young. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I was born in Scotland.
Yeah.
My dad's actually a football player.
My dad was a football player as well.
Oh, really?
What kind of football?
Well,
soccer.
He played for. He was on the books of Dundee United.
Oh, really?
Back in the day, you know, a long time ago, something like 1977, 1978, that kind of time. But he just had an opportunity to get out of Scotland, I suppose, either to go to Australia or New Zealand and play in the National League over there. And he took the chance. And I think Dunedin probably is about as far as you can get from Dundee if you follow the globe. And so Dunedin City had an opportunity, and my dad took it. And we, as a young family, I got an older brother. He would have been 2.5. I would have been about 9 months old. We moved out to Dunedin back then. And so I spent the first 10 years of my life in New Zealand. Grew up with a Kiwi accent. I probably still got some of it. But then after Dad's football career kind of came to an end when he was in his sort of early to mid-30s, we moved back to Scotland. So this is when I was about 9, 10 years old. But it didn't last too long in Scotland. It was too big a change, really, compared with New Zealand. The economy wasn't good. And so then they decided, well, let's go back, but let's go via Australia, see what it's like. And we had 3 months, I think, in Perth, Australia. Okay. And we all fell in love with it, the beach, you know, everything else. But then we had to go back to New Zealand, come back to Australia. So the point being, at a young age, I was travelling around a lot, and I was experiencing like the heartache of leaving a place, leaving people and all that. And it's very difficult, you know. But I think, and I've done it to my kids, and we can talk about that perhaps later. It's like a therapy session now. But I think if you've been exposed to that at a young age, you realise that actually the world doesn't end. Yeah. It's hard, but the world doesn't end, and you are able to pick up again and make a life. You watch your parents do it, you do it yourself. And so I suppose when, you know, I went to university, you know, met my wife, and I actually met her at school, but we got together at university. So I've known Yana since I was 12. But we sort of formed that close bond, and we had decided that we want to go overseas. You know, we'd decided that from when we finished university. We actually went backpacking together when we were 19 for 3 months in one of the university breaks in Europe, from Australia to Europe. So we did that really early, and we were like, this is what we're going to do. So we really set our mind on it. And then, but it was like, no, let's get our qualifications, let's have some experience, let's get a house, and then let's get overseas. And so we left Perth when we were 27, and then we've been doing various things since then. So I don't know. It'll probably be, my kids are probably going to do this as well. Yeah. Kind of. I don't know. Do I hope not? I don't know. Maybe I don't hope not. I kind of hope they're just happy in a way. But my parents did it. I've been doing it, and I don't know. It's there. It's in the blood, I suppose. No,
it's interesting. I'm exactly the same. My dad's from Honduras. He played football there. Went to Spain to play in 1960 something. Wow. And my mum was from the UK. Then she went to Spain to work as a rep, and so kind of those cultures. I understand what you're saying. And
do you play football, Amelia?
I used to, yes, but not so much anymore. But out of practice now, unfortunately. Don't test me. But one of the things I read from your LinkedIn, like I told you, is I found the way you kind of analyze certain moments and experiences and kind of give them meaning, which I think that sense of reflection, I think, is quite important for growth and just for understanding yourself and gaining confidence in a way. And one of the things I liked was, and I'm going to quote you now, focus on the present and focus on yourself. Get yourself stable and able to enjoy the moment. Avoid distractions, particularly things you have no control over. When you feel strong in yourself, start helping others. It is amazing how good it feels for you and the other person when you pick them up. I think that's quite powerful, because I think, first of all, the idea of focusing on yourself. People sometimes don't always like doing that because they feel maybe they're a bit selfish, but it's not. You're there for you. What do you think? Where does this kind of idea, these kind of reflections, where does this come from, and how important is that to you? You know, working in energy and in law, which are, you know, two industries that have a lot of pressure on them. You know, energy is very volatile, everything's always changing, and law, you know, timelines. How important is that kind of reflection for you in terms of your life? Or you said you don't really know why you do it, but what do you get from it in a way?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if you've, you know, like both of our dads were soccer players, right? Imagine when they got to step up and take a penalty in a really crunch game, like a cup final or something. I mean, there's no doubt that they would have had, if they actually were to score it, and I know my dad missed quite a few, but he was all right, they'd have to really collect themselves. Yeah. They'd really have to collect themselves and make sure that they are there, 100% there and in the moment. Because if they allowed themselves to panic a little bit, they're probably going to sky the ball, hit the crossbar, or give it straight to the keeper. And you see that sometimes, you do. Less these days, because I think professional sports people are really on this now.
Yeah, it's
they're on this. They are breathing. They are doing all the things they need to do to just get themselves in the moment. And so I suppose the point of that is, you know, if you listen to enough mindfulness, if you do enough meditation or that kind of thing, you hear it again and again and again. All we have is right now. Like this moment that you and I are sharing right now, that's the only thing that's real, right? Your past, okay, you've got to kind of conjure that up, don't you? You use the creative part of your brain. Yeah. The future, well, that hasn't happened yet. It's this. And so there's something about if you can accept that and you can just focus on the moment, you'll do the best that you're going to do. Because all we have, it's essentially a series of moments, right? Yeah. And so if you can do that, if you can get as present as possible, get as focused as you can, in sum total, you're going to do better than people that can't do that. Because part of their brain power is reflecting on the past and it's thinking about the future. So it's conjuring up maybe some depressive moods or some anxiety or something like that, and it's clouding what you have now. You're not going to do as well. The focus on yourself is you can only really do that, I suppose, if you feel good, you know, if you feel comfortable, you feel stable, and that isn't just a matter of taking a few deep breaths and being good right now. That's probably a result of how you treated yourself yesterday and the day before. You know, it may come down to your eating regime, your fitness regime, how much alcohol you allow yourself to consume or other things, how well you sleep, you know, what kind of conversations you got into yesterday and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a constant effort to produce the best of yourself. And in my game, okay, there's the sort of client side, deal side, negotiations and all that, and people are often trying to disturb you in those situations. Yeah. But if you can just be there, be fully present, you're going to do better. And then there's dealing with people. And I'm dealing with people all the time. And again, you know, there are emotional situations. I mean, we aren't, you know, it's not a hospital, it's not an emergency ward or anything like that. It's, you know, it's a corporate environment, but people can get quite emotional because for a variety of reasons. And just to be able to collect yourself and just deal with that moment, you're going to do better. You're going to do better in that moment. You're going to do better over time. So I guess I believe in it because I know it works. Yeah. And you can deploy this in all sorts of situations. Yeah, and it is all that. It's that collection of things that you do with yourself in order to be able to be present. That I think that really counts.
Yeah. And how do you take that into, you know, I think in your global energy team, in your law firm, you have, I think 150 people more or less in your globally. In Herbert Smith.
It's almost 3,000. Yeah.
But in the energy team.
The energy team, we'd have over 100 partners.
Okay, right.
It's interesting because it's a sector. Our firm's divided up by practice groups, so corporate, finance, disputes, that sort of thing. And our sectors are sort of a bit of an overlay across the firm. Okay. And so in our firm globally, about 700 people would, if you like, identify in with the sector. Energy, yeah. They'll spend a good proportion of their time, probably the majority of their time, in the energy sector. The energy sector crosses over with infrastructure and mining to some extent, as you'd expect, right? And we do have separate sector groups there, but we go to the market as a single unit. But yeah, I'm going to say around 700 people. You know, if I put out an email to the global energy sector team, community or whatever, that's the kind of number of people that we're talking about.
And then so leading basically a 700 people team, how do you take what we've just spoken about into that leadership and kind of trying to convey that to them as well, because if you're a top standout lawyer in your field, you want the people that you're, you know, bringing up to be the same as you or take things from you. How do you look at that?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'll try to stick with the topic of sort of in the moment, being present, mindfulness or whatever. You're just interacting with people all the time, and it's really important that you can be authentic.
Yeah.
You know, in your communications with people, that you're kind of presenting a similar version of yourself all the time, ideally, right? And we all have our moods. We have our ups and our downs and our ins and our outs, and we have our moments. But you're trying to present a version of yourself that people can kind of they can trust. Yeah. They can trust what's going to turn up when you come in the room, or you know, if I ask for something, what's he going to say? You know, how's he going to treat this decision? Is there consistency? Is there a policy behind it? Is there a strategy? Is there a purpose? Is there a vision? And the more you can kind of lean into those concepts, vision, mission, strategy, tactics, all that stuff that you read about in the leadership books and the strategy books and the organisational health books and that sort of thing, the more you're going to be able, in each interaction with each person, be consistent and be straightforward and logical and all that sort of thing. So I think you can deal with hundreds of people in a good way, as long as you've kind of thought about what are we trying to achieve? You know, what are we trying to achieve? And I do it all with a team, you know, with the leadership team. I don't do it by myself, because the strategies that you set, the decisions that you make, they're always going to be better if they've had the benefit of being in other people's brains as well, and that you've bounced off each other and you've created something together. So, you know, I was the global head of energy in my firm. I actually decided to make it a co-head structure. That was partly so I could kind of spend more time in my own practice, because, you know, it's funny in law firms, you know, every partner has to have a practice. You know, we've got to do our deals, we've got to do our disputes, our financings, we've got to look after our clients, all those things. And that keeps you in the market, that keeps you relevant. And lawyers aren't very good, really, at taking direction from non-lawyers. We're funny. Most law firms are run by lawyers, all the way up to CEO. You know, our CEO, a guy called Justin D'Agostino, a fantastic guy. He's a top arbitration lawyer, you know, and that's just how it is. So we operate in our practices, but then we also act as leaders and managers of different you know, business units and divisions, and in my case, a sector. So, and in the sector, in the energy sector, you know, my job is to stay across what's going on in the market, make sure that we have a good strategy that allows the firm to grow in relation to that type of work with that type of client, and that we're focusing on the right things to go out there and get the work and grow the business. So we'll have campaigns from time to time. So at the moment, you know, what's hot and what's not, right? Yeah. Data centers, defense, you know, what's happening in the renewables market. You know, there's a lot of turmoil in that market on those types of energy technologies, on what's happening with tariffs. So that, for just as an example, that's creating a lot of activity in the markets. And so if we can stay on top of that and stay on top of these various things, and if we can get those hundreds of lawyers kind of looking out for those things and doing their bit in different parts of the world, and we bring it all back together again, we can bring something quite useful, you know, and powerful to our clients and to the market. And
explain to someone that doesn't really know what you do, like, how do you help your clients? You know, because I think in the energy industry, it's quite an opaque industry, and like as we said, the law industry as well. What's your you know, kind of contribution with your clients?
Okay. I'll stick to the industry, because I don't think anyone needs a lecture on what lawyers do.
No, exactly.
Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe we've come to that time in human history again where we have to start again. I don't know. What's it? Shakespeare's famous quote. I think it's from Henry VIII. The first thing we do, we'll kill all the lawyers. Have you heard that one?
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, look that one up. In other words, if you want to get to the heart and soul of a society and you want to take power, you need to get the lawyers out of the way, because they're going to be the big thorns in your side. So we do have a role and a function in society as officers of the court and all that. Yeah. But, you know, we're in the modern age, and you know, we've got hundreds of lawyers basically in London doing this kind of work for all these clients, thousands around the world. So we work on projects. We're helping companies buy energy projects, so already existing power plants, renewable energy plants, nuclear power facilities, oil and gas fields, gas transmission facilities, all the bits and pieces of the global energy infrastructure that basically enable, modern society. We help companies buy in and sell out of that industry, because different organisations in that industry have their own strategies, of what they're trying to achieve, and so they'll want to buy things, sell things, put things together, joint ventures, all that kind of thing, and there's a lot of legal documentation that's required to enable those transactions to happen, because there's a lot of money at stake. Some of these deals are in the hundreds of millions, if not the billions, because of the value of the revenues that are there underpinning these contracts. So there's a lot of legal work involved to make sure that everyone's getting what they expect out of these transactions, that all the regulations are complied with, that the risks are allocated properly among the different participants, and that all has to be documented, etc. And given the value of a lot of these transactions, it's worth putting the money into the diligence that lawyers do and making sure the contracts are right. It'd be like if you think about buying a house or something. Of course you're going to get a surveyor to look at the property. Of course you're going to do all the due diligence to make sure all the planning permissions have been granted for all the extensions and all that kind of thing. And of course you want a robust sale and purchase agreement that's going to allow you to actually exchange and complete. Just take that on a grander scale and think about other assets, all the real estate involved, planning permissions, all that kind of stuff. And it's just essentially to make sure that if someone puts their money into something like an energy asset, they're going to get back what they expect. They're going to get the return they expect. And we also help clients build new things. And at the moment, a lot of the new stuff that's being built in the energy industry around the world, there's a lot being spent on renewable energy. That is the energy of the future. And there's a lot going into some of the new technologies, but also just building out, offshore wind, solar, batteries, hydrogen, although a lot of the hydrogen projects probably need much more support, carbon capture and storage, new nuclear, you name it. There is still investment going on in oil and gas. There's a lot. But for the last few years, there's been a very heavy push into renewables. So we're doing all that kind of work as well. The development rights, putting together the project agreements, the value chains, the financing, and then things happen, disputes. We do a lot of disputes at the firm I'm with, Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer, all around the world, helping clients basically enforce their bargains and sort of really get what they want out of these assets. Does that give you a bit of a flavour?
Yeah, no, of course. I just asked that question because, like I said, I worked at Chambers, and before I went to Chambers, I didn't really understand what lawyers did. But then after I left, I really had a renewed respect for how important lawyers are, and nothing gets done if there isn't a lawyer behind it. So I just wanted people to understand that, because I don't think people really have an insight into that, really.
I don't want to elevate us too much. No. The fact is, to do good business, you have to focus on the details.
Yeah, correct.
And the lawyers are the ones at the end who are dealing with the last detail to make sure that what you're trying to do can be done. So good business people know that they need good lawyers next to them to get stuff done. It's a bit of a shame in a way. Maybe it would be better if society functioned in a way where you didn't need that, but you do. Because there's a lot of complexity in the world, and you have to have people next to you that can navigate you through the complexity, like a kind of like a concierge, or a consigliere, maybe as maybe it's in other languages. But you need people next to you that you can trust and who can coordinate. Because you don't just need one lawyer to do these things; you need dozens of them. But you have to have a way of coordinating that group of lawyers through almost like a single point of contact. So that the business person or the business team can move forward and do what they want to do. So at the end of the day, we're just helping people do things that they want to do. Some of the bigger companies in the world who want to develop, green energy facilities or oil and gas facilities or whatever, so they can achieve their objectives. So that's the role we play in society, I guess.
No, and within that answer, you started mentioning, basically the energy mix, and you said that renewables is really, the investment going to renewables is massive at the moment, that oil and gas is decreasing. But there's that narrative that we spoke about on the phone, that there isn't a very pragmatic narrative, let's say, around the future of energy and how we can build a strong energy future. Because it's not about idealism, it's about getting things done. Like you say, lawyers get things done. The energy industry needs to get things done. And in order to help the energy industry get things done, I think we need to have better narratives, because that comes into politics. comes into politics. And so how do you think someone looking on that maybe isn't, really informed on the energy industry, how would you explain to them how the energy future looks?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. And the energy system globally is just massive. It's actually, it's hard for anybody to appreciate just how big it is. It's been built up over, really, I'd say over centuries, right? If you go back, right back to the day of, burning trees or whatever to generate steam, or burning coal or whatever. It's just a massive system, and it just works. I mean, we turn up to this studio, you flick the switch and the lights come on. You flick the switch and the microphone hopefully is working. We just take it all for granted.
Yeah,
we take it, and the fact is, the electrons that are used to create the power for the lights, for example, how were they set in motion? Were they set in motion by burning coal? Probably not in this country, because that's not done anymore. Was it gas? Was it a wind turbine? Was it a solar farm? I mean, who knows? The light comes out, the photons are on us at the moment, and we're experiencing the benefits of that, those electrons being set in motion. We don't see or feel the difference, and yet people care about it. They never used to, but they started caring about it. They started thinking about how the photons being generated, how the electrons moving. Is it good energy or is it bad energy? What is it? And it's generally linked to climate change, right? And as people have experienced changes in the climate over their lifetimes, they're getting more and more concerned about where is this going. Because people are feeling it. They're feeling the changes in their own whatever part of the world they're in. You see it and you feel it. And there's this, I guess, pejorative that's been attached to fossil fuels, because if you burn fossil fuels and you release the carbon dioxide and the methane and everything else into the atmosphere, you are contributing to climate change. And so people have made the jump to think, well, fossil fuels shouldn't be burnt because they're causing climate change. But the problem with that way of thinking is, if you stop burning the fossil fuels, you really don't have a lot of the services and a lot of the products that we absolutely take for granted and need on a daily basis. And so it's very difficult to imagine what the world would look like without these products. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you look at that large energy system that I described, and I don't need to put a quantity on it because it would be meaningless anyway, but you can quantify it I believe in petajoules. You see what I mean? But it's massive, and about 80% of that globally is actually coming from fossil fuels. And so whilst renewable energy is growing at an exponential rate, by the way, it's growing very quickly, the growth in the energy system globally is bigger than the addition from renewable energy. So even if renewable energy is growing at an exponential rate, the energy system as a whole is eclipsing that growth year on year, meaning the rest is growing too. And I think that at times, maybe people have thought, as we convert to renewables and as we become more efficient, we'll just burn less fossil fuels. We won't need them. I mean, even the IEA came out in, I think it was in 2021, and they said, you don't need any more oil and gas fields to be added. We're done. We could just use the ones we've got and we'll get there. The problem is everybody underestimated demand growth, energy demand growth. And probably because it's almost impossible to predict how that would go. And it's really coming, of course, it's the emergence of additional prosperity in the developing world, which is a very good thing. You mentioned some of the places you've grown up in, and I've been all over Asia, Southeast Asia, and different countries. I've done work in Mozambique, and you see people deserve to have prosperity, and that is being provided all around the world. That's obviously contributing to energy usage, but actually, largely, it's technology. It's the data centers and the AI that's powering our current way of life. Yeah. And that's only going to increase. I mean, there are demand projections that take into account where all this stuff is going. but it's probably grossly underestimating the truth of how much additional energy is going to be needed to take us into the future. Yeah. So we are going to have a lot of additional energy demand going forward, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, the benefits we're getting out of AI and out of the data that backs up our phones and everything else, it's incredible. You know, we probably take it for granted, but just 100%. Having those devices in our pockets, we're probably not using them in the right way. We'll get to that later maybe. But the benefits they're providing us are just unbelievable. And we never stop to think about it, but it really is something else, you know. And it's only going to increase. Yeah. So the energy system we have, it's massive, it's growing. It's 80% fossil fuels. The renewables are being added year on year, and they're not eating into the fossil fuels. And if you can go to different parts of the world and you can have this conversation, and you get a very different narrative in different parts of the world. If you're in the US right now, they've kind of just moved on, and they're trying to solve these challenges of the future around making sure there's enough energy and enough cheap energy to enable the value chains, the supply chains to be onshored in the US, to ensure that the AI progress can continue to be made and all that sort of thing, as a means of
is that a good way to think about it? Do you think?
A good way to think about it.
Is that the way people should be looking at it, like focusing them through that way?
It's just the way it's going. I don't know that it really matters how we each individually think about it. It's probably about just gripping the reality of what's going on. Because probably at some level somebody can control all of this, but I'm not sure where that level is. You know, I think it's just happening. It's happening to us almost. Yeah. And it's about maybe observing that, and then maybe allowing that to help you determine your own mindset in relation to it, because it is happening. The energy system around the world is growing. It needs to grow to meet the demand, and it is predominantly fossil fuels. But the technology around the edges is getting better year on year. Probably if you really want to make a difference, you'd focus on R&D, research and development, and engineering, and new solutions, maybe carbon capture and storage, nuclear fusion, small modular reactors, the sorts of things that might one day get to scale and actually replace what are the services that fossil fuels are providing for us.
You mentioned AI and data centers. I think the emergence of AI has actually brought this issue to the fore.
I think so.
With the people have realised the huge surge in demand for energy from AI. People have actually realised, if there's no energy, we can't have AI, which now basically is going to become the fundamental of everything we do. And so I think we need to create a more pragmatic, and this is leading to a more pragmatic maybe conversation. Yeah. I know I was looking at your LinkedIn as well, and I know you have colleagues that launched something called Pragma, which is about kind of helping create this pragmatic narrative around the energy industry. I personally really identify with what they're doing.
Incredible.
And what impact can initiatives like that really have, do you think, in creating this narrative? Yeah. And how as an industry can we try and push this more pragmatic conversation, not just at an industry level, but at a more global level, so that people that necessarily don't know the ins and outs of the industry can have this kind of perspective as well?
Pragma. Yes, Pragma. It's a great name for an organisation, because I guess it is short for pragmatic, and I know them very well. Amy Miller, Ben West, Jack Ingram, they came out of another organisation called the Energy Council, which I also love. It's doing amazing work. I really, I've got a lot of time for the people there. Charlie Abrines, if he's listening, he's a good guy, and the rest of the team there. And it's good because now we've got two organisations. It's actually very different. But I think the Pragma philosophy is really about changing the narrative in the world about energy, increasing literacy of people with the energy industry, so that they understand, and maybe they might appreciate it a bit more, not attack it to such a degree. Because we've mentioned it already about the burning of fossil fuels and climate change and all that. Sure, that is what's happening. But if our present life only works with that, then we've got to work out how to change the energy system and bring about a cleaner energy. But accept the fact that it's going to take time. Unless you want some sort of human calamity to take place, it's going to take time. So getting the narrative in shape requires a lot of work. because probably for a number of decades, I would say, the energy industry hasn't done the greatest job on the narrative. And you've mentioned that to me earlier as well. It hasn't, because it's largely thought that it's so essential. People must realise how essential energy is. We're providing energy, so we're good people, right? Mm-hmm. And they are. I know a lot of people in the energy industry. They are very good people. Because it's funny as well, in terms of working out what side of the legal industry to work in, people think, I want to be this kind of law, I want to be that kind of law, I want to do private equity, I want to be M&A, I want to be this, I want to be that. But the best way to figure out what part of the industry we want to be in is what kind of people do you really resonate with, And I think with my own personality and everything else, I just get along very well with people in the industry.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it. It's detail oriented, but it's also big picture. Yeah. You're doing kind of very interesting, complex things, but you're dealing with down to earth people. So it just fits, just works. And so the people in the industry are good people doing good things, and yet a lot of parts of society think that they're, the devil incarnate.
I know. This is exactly what I want to change, because I think I find it very frustrating, because it's like it comes back to what you said before about good energy and bad energy. That simplistic narrative is completely unconducive to moving forward as a world, as an industry. Yeah. So, and that's what I want to change. That's why I want to speak to, I would like to speak in the future to, the CEO of Chevron or CEO of all these big people, just to kind of give people an idea of who these people are. And I think I mentioned it in the last podcast we just did today as well, that, I think people work in energy because they truly think that we can make an impact, a good impact in the world. But actually from the outside looking in, they think we're doing it to make a bad impact in the world. And I think that's a critical reframe.
Exactly. I mean, so I mentioned earlier about vision and mission and strategy and that kind of thing. So we kind of sat down as an energy leadership team in 2019 when I first constituted the team. And we wanted to reflect on, well, what is the vision of our firm in this sector, in the energy sector? And we came up with basically three word slogans, because that was the thing at the time. And it was energize the world, lead the transition, support the change. Yeah. All right. So reflecting on the fact that part of our mission, if you like, part of what we're trying to achieve is to do our bit as lawyers to bring energy to the world, so to energise the world. That means different things in different places. Maybe in an advanced European country, that might mean help put in place the first offshore wind project, or the first carbon capture and storage facility, or the next gas-fired power plant with some special air pollution control technology or something like that. But maybe if it's Mozambique, it's liberating the first gas fields so they can export gas to the world, bring in income, and then support the development of the rest of the economy. Or maybe in an African nation, it's an oil project, or maybe it's a mine somewhere. It means different things in different parts of the world, but fundamentally energise the world. And leading the transition was supposed to capture the fact that this transition is not going to happen by itself. It needs leadership. It needs people to go first. In these first-of-kind projects. It needs new policies, new regulations, new ways of thinking. So we figure, well, if we've been in this industry so long and we've got so much experience around the world, maybe we can step forward, and provide a bit of leadership. So we do thought leadership. We take our ideas and we push them. I just had a seminar this morning with one of the big oil and gas companies in the world. We brought a global team together and we talked to them about satellites that detect methane emissions.
No, I saw there was an article about that as well.
Yeah, we wrote an article about it. They saw it and they were like, oh, that's interesting. Could you talk to us about it? We put a team together and we had a good chat to them about it all. That's thought leadership. When you're introducing ideas that weren't previously known or giving a bit of detail. And then supporting the changes is supposed to capture the fact this is all really hard. And we're only human, after all. We're only human. We're doing our best. Can't do it by ourselves. Can you help? So we're supporting companies to change, also supporting our own people to change. If you want to do a new type of technology like nuclear fusion or something, if it's brand new, then by definition, no one's done it before. So they don't know how to do it. So work with our people to take existing skill sets, existing capabilities, and then look for what's the iteration, what's the next step. What's an analog out there which is similar to what you're trying to do? What's the next step? So a few years ago, the first green hydrogen projects were looked at. Green hydrogen. So taking renewable energy, powering electrolyzers, separating hydrogen from water, and then producing the hydrogen, maybe combining it with nitrogen to create ammonia so you can transport it, transporting it, taking it somewhere else, separating it, burning the hydrogen. This sort of stuff. The best analog for that is liquefied natural gas. So if you were pitching for a green hydrogen project, the best thing you could do really was put together a liquefied natural gas team with a renewable energy team, and then say, here we are, this is what we've got. We can do that, but now we can do that and also say, and here's our green hydrogen credentials, because we've done it 3 or 4 times before.
Of course.
So, you're sort of, you're supporting people to do things they never did before. And that's our philosophy, and that's the vision, and that they act as touchstones, if you like, for what we're trying to do. Yeah. And in general, if you listen to the way I'm talking, it's positive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, 100%.
It's positive. You're bringing new things to people. You're bringing things to people that they need, and you're helping to support basically human society and civilization. Even if you take it to its absolute root, the civilization that we have, the modern civilization that we all enjoy and want to maintain.
Yeah. No, and something you mentioned very interesting there was the idea of the energy transition, or the energy addition, however you want to put it, is going to be different everywhere in the world. Yeah. And that's what I think what people don't understand. Just because here we're maybe ready to now pursue renewables, somewhere like Africa needs to actually carbonize before it decarbonizes in a sense. So kind of give people a bit of an insight into that kind of concept, that the transition is going to take a different pace everywhere in the world. And of course, you've worked in, as you mentioned, Southeast Asia. So how does that perspective kind of help you explain that as well?
Well, energy transition, it's become a term, hasn't it, that is bandied around a lot now. But actually, when it first entered the vernacular, as it were, it was energy transitions. It was a plural. And that was designed to recognise the fact that it is going to be different everywhere in the world.
I didn't know that, actually. It was originally with an S.
Trying to think of the guys. Is it Václav Smil? I think he wrote a book on it. He's the guy. He's Bill Gates' go-to guy on anything to do with energy. He's written a lot of great books. But it recognises the fact that you've got to transition from something to something over time. And it's also, it's not a linear thing. It's quite messy because there's a lot involved. You see what's happening right now in the renewable energy industry. A lot of the projects are struggling, because some require subsidy and some don't. But those that do, if the political will starts to wane a bit on the volume of the subsidy, and if the subsidy doesn't adjust to the present conditions regarding higher interest rates, higher construction costs, etc., and often the subsidies don't respond to that, the projects don't make money. If they don't make money, then you can't do them. It's like that. People might say, oh, why do you have to make money off energy? But you have to turn a profit. Otherwise, you just simply can't do these things. And some companies have been trying to just accommodate large volumes of renewable energy into their global portfolios, offset them against other parts of their business. And that's a great thing to do, But if other companies that you're competing with are not doing that, you're not going to be as profitable. And the capital markets will kind of ensure that the money will flow into the most profitable ventures. So, again, it's reality. And so, if as a society we want to make this big transition to green energy, and we want to have energy that is cleaner and cheaper, the government has to provide, the people, right? The people ultimately have to provide the subsidy. So they really have to want it, and they have to understand it. And you'll see as, I suppose, some of these other forms of energy become more prevalent, and the costs, the true costs, start getting loaded onto the public, you'll start to see how much people really want it. You're already seeing it in some of the political narratives that we experience in the UK, in the US, and elsewhere. And then people they've got to consider, well, how much they really value all these things. It's very complicated, though, because climate change is such an emotional subject.
I know, yeah.
And again, people experience it in different ways.
Yeah, correct.
Depending on where you live in the world. So it's a very, very difficult subject to deal with in the context of these choices people make about the form of energy they're going to use. It's hard.
Yeah. I think But whether it's renewables, oil and gas, I think it's all hard. It's something I read from an article on foreign affairs that you post, and I read it. It's the idea. It's quite an obvious idea of if we want to move from oil and gas to renewables, we're going from big oil to I love this kind of framing, to big shovels, which is the idea of mining critical minerals and all these things we need to create EVs, lithium, cobalt, copper, and which also comes with its ultimately comes with environmental consequences as well. So I think, how do you see that as well? Because I think that in the narrative is something that we also don't realize, and many people maybe don't know how this technology, where it comes from ultimately, which is kind of in a similar way a kind of, it's an extractive practice like oil and gas is.
That's right. That's right. I don't know. What is there? More than 8 billion human beings on the planet, and prosperity is rising for everybody, really. Maybe relative prosperity is something we don't always experience. We don't think we're getting richer, but we are. Yeah. Everybody is, all around the world, on average, right? And so that just leads to the consumption of more resources. And so, if you push away from oil and gas to batteries and the various materials that are needed to make the wind farms, the solar panels, et cetera, EVs, you're still having to use the resources of the planet. So if you follow it through and you follow the chains all the way to the end, because this is real, this is happening, it's not just made up. There is a mine somewhere where those minerals had to come out that go into your smartphone. That happened. That there was a transportation chain around the world that led to you having that phone in your hand to just come from, I don't know, an Apple factory. There's a lot that goes to. So people probably should understand that. They should understand that. But I guess over time, technology will mean that things continue to be miniaturized, that we can become more efficient with the resources. There'll be more recycling. We can't even foresee the level of technology, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now. But I don't know, I suppose I try to take an optimistic and positive viewpoint for the future. And I don't think you could have predicted that you'd have the technology that you have in your laptop or my phone 20 years ago. There's no way you could have thought that what you have is possible. Just even video calling, if you think about that, how prevalent that is, and how little it costs. It would have been the first video calls would have cost an absolute fortune. You'd have to go to a room and sit in front of a TV. You just don't really do that anymore. So the abundance of what is required to enable these things to happen is only going to increase. The amount of resources needed will per unit will go down. Our ability to recycle will go up. There's some great literature on the subject. There's a recent book called Abundance by Ezra, which you might have read. I think that's quite interesting, the way they're thinking about things. But there's one that was written a few years ago by David Deutsch called The Edge of Infinity, which is very interesting. Just this notion that we can't imagine even how how things will progress, how technology will go. So I don't know. It's good for people to think about where everything's coming from. And there's no free lunch. I remember seeing, I don't know, a bit of a tongue-in-cheek documentary by Michael Moore a few years ago called Planet of the Humans. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
I'm not really recommending it. But he's sort of pointing out the fact that, renewable energy, you've still got to deal with all the components that go into it. You've still got to dispose of them. It's all got to go somewhere. And if you follow it all through, you'll see that there's no free lunch anywhere. But as a human race, we have to get better at recycling and just dealing with the consequences of our consumption.
And I wanted to ask you a question, another question close to related to AI. I wrote a newsletter for the Energy Executive 360 newsletter a while ago, saying my title was "Big Tech Becoming the New IOCs." Not really, not exactly correct, but I thought it would be kind of a cool title, and that's all obviously relating to how we're seeing big tech companies like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft all buying up projects and even recommissioning nuclear projects, nuclear sites to provide more energy to the world to fuel AI and data centers. What's the implications of that? Because obviously that's the legal structures for those kind of deals are going to be completely new, something we've never seen before. So how do you look at that?
Interesting. I haven't heard that saying before.
No, I made that up.
Okay. I don't think they really want to be the next IOCs. I think IOCs, international oil companies, they've played a role in the world at, I suppose, finding the energy sources and really bringing energy commodities to markets and then selling them into the markets. And some of them over time went into the production of power, so generating electrons from molecules, and some have stuck to the molecule side. But generally, they've been going around the world finding the energy, bringing it to markets, helping people's lives be better. In general, I know that there's been incidents over the years, and people focus on those, but in general, that's what they've been doing. The tech companies with the data centers, etc., they're also trying to make our lives better, but they need energy in order to do that. So they're consumers of energy at the end of the day. I don't know that they will ultimately become energy companies, but they might have to for a bit, because if we're going to run out of enough power to keep those data centers going, they're going to have to lean in to the power industry. And the power industry is just the end of a value chain, and that value chain goes all the way up to oil wells and gas wells and things like gas fields and things like that. And there's infrastructure in the middle. So yeah, you're going to see tech companies going up that value chain, going upstream, as it were. If the ultimate downstream point is actually like the bit of data, the ultimate upstream is the barrel of oil. And you are starting to see them go further upstream. They're doing deals. They're entering into not just power purchase agreements from utilities. They're commissioning new power facilities, whether it's renewable nuclear energy, or whether it's gas-fired power or renewable power, whatever. They're commissioning these things, and they are going to need like complete energy systems to support them. So, I mean, look, we see it as an opportunity as a law firm because it's so complicated.
Of course.
And basically, if you're an energy lawyer, when you look at a value chain, you'd stop at the point where the electron is sold to a person or to a company or whatever. But now we can keep going. The value chain has just increased because now that electron goes into a data center and ultimately, produces a service. If you think about it, it produces a service to people that want to store their information and to utilize the graphics processing units in an AI facility to do some work. So your value chains just really increased a lot, and the value of these value chains is in the billions. And so there's a huge amount that needs to be done to make this happen. It's actually very exciting. If you've got people of your age out there, Emilio, and they're thinking, what am I going to do with my life? You could do worse than get involved in that sector. It's really complex. No one really knows what the answers are at the moment, or how to do it. But there's so much to be done to ensure that these data centers keep getting power, and that they can keep upgrading over time to produce all these wonderful new inventions that are going to come in the future, like quantum computing and cool stuff like that.
Now I've got just two more questions. That was a lot of very interesting. One question is from a friend of mine who is looking to become a lawyer, and I asked him what question would you want me to ask him for budding lawyers. He said he gave me two, but I'm going to pick the one I prefer. What will be the biggest challenges for energy focused lawyers in the next 5 years, I guess, for people coming into the industry?
Well, everyone's got a general issue around AI and making sure they know how to utilize it as best, because they'll be competing against people that do know how to use it. So I think, generally speaking, learning how to prompt is really, really important. But more specifically to the sector, the regulatory side of the industry is getting more and more complicated, as we're trying to fulfill various objectives at the same time. The regulations around emissions, the regulations around access, all sorts of things. That side of it's very complicated, and only getting more so. I suppose as the world is shifting, maybe there's a bit of a fragmentation in the way different things are being pursued in different countries, dealing with the balance between different jurisdictions is is very hard. But I think your friend should be pretty excited to be entering the industry at this time, because there's so much going on. You know, there's more and more happening every year. There's more and more being spent on new energy technologies every year. Oil and gas is pretty much back, you know, but it's back in a form where it'll be more efficient. It'll be cleaner. You know, oil and gas companies are really focused on emissions. You know, methane emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. They see it as best practice to keep those emissions as low as possible. Yeah. So they're trying to develop new fields in a way that is, you know, best practice. So there's a lot going on really all across the industry. New nuclear technology coming in as well. So it's an exciting time. Yeah. So I just say to him, just get stuck in. And you know, if you're going to be a lawyer in the energy industry, focus on being a good lawyer as well. You know, like really have a good understanding of the law. And good skills when it comes to the sort of discipline and the practice that you're trying to pursue. Yeah,
and I think that thing you said there about there's so much going on at the moment. It's a really exciting time. That's why I'm in. That's what really attracted me to it.
It's an abundant time.
Yeah, know? And I think, if I feel like I always say this, if there's an industry you want to make an impact, that's going to make an impact for over generations, not just now, I think this is the one to be in.
Yeah, come in. We need your help.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question I'm asking as a last question for each guest is, from everything we've spoken about, what would be a question you would want the audience to go away and think about, to ask themselves and reflect on something from this conversation? It could be about energy, it can be about mindset, can be about business, something, how we see the world. What question would you pose to the audience to help them reflect on what we've spoken about today?
Yeah. Well, how are you going to try and be more present and more in the moment, you know, in your own life?
And why would you ask them that?
Because I think that's one of the most important things, as we've said, to do the best you can do and to make the biggest contribution is just to be as present as possible, you know, in everything that you do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Okay. I really appreciate the hour and I think it was an hour 5 minutes.
Was it? Okay. Thanks.
Something like that. He'll confirm with me later.
Absolute pleasure.
But I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it more or less. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.